We're following some breaking news. A U.S. official tells CBS News Ukraine's government has agreed to a peace proposal to stop Russia's nearly 4-year assault, with only minor details said to be left to sort out. But there has been no immediate reaction from Russia. U.S. officials and diplomatic sources also tell CBS News Army Secretary Dan Driscoll is in Abu Dhabi today meeting with Russian officials. We're also told a delegation from Ukraine is there as well and has been talking to Driscoll and his team. So let's bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams to talk more about this. So Holly, these are fast-moving developments this morning. Yesterday, when you and I spoke, it seemed as if the Ukrainians were at that moment, not on board with this 24 peace plan. Now it seems that there is a framework for peace, at least that the Ukrainians agree to.
That's right, Vlad. A senior Ukrainian official posted on social media this morning that the U.S. and Ukraine reached a, quote, common understanding of the core terms of the agreement. Now, we don't have any details, but we do have a very good sense of what the sticking points were. President Trump's original 28-point peace plan, which we first heard about just last week, required that Ukraine hand over swaths of its territory permanently to Russia, reduce the size of its military, and said that it would be barred from joining NATO, the US-led alliance that could potentially protect it from future attack. Now, it's been over 3 years since Vladimir Putin launched his invasion, but that plan seemed to mirror many of Russia's demands. And the fear here in Europe has always been that a deal on terms like that could effectively reward Putin for his invasion. Now, the initial response from Ukraine's leader, President Volodymyr Zelensky, was that the plan could mean the loss either of Ukraine's dignity or of a key partner, that is the United States. However, after US and Ukrainian officials rushed to meet on Sunday in Switzerland, Zelensky started sounding much more upbeat. And last night, in an address to the nation, he said that changes had been made to the plan and it could become workable. Now, we can't confirm those changes, but there's been reporting that it could remove the veto on NATO membership, that it could include security guarantees for Ukraine, and that it may not restrict the size of Ukraine's military. But we need to point out that if those changes have, in fact, been made to the plan, it seems unlikely that Vladimir Putin will ever agree to it. And then we'll be back to square one. Ukrainian officials are also hoping to see President Zelensky pay a visit to Washington in the coming days.
All right, Holly Williams breaking it down for us from London. Holly, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So let's stay on this subject. Despite the push for peace, Russia and Ukraine traded deadly attacks overnight, killing at least 7 people in Ukraine's capital and 3 others in Russia. That's according to officials in both countries. James Waterhouse with our partners at the BBC has more from Kyiv.
Any lasting peace deal in this country is going to have to change the dynamic of this. A Russia that is happy to keep attacking by any means possible. Either through aerial assaults like this, where you can see a drone has slammed into this apartment block, or through the grinding assaults we're seeing in the east. But it's also going to have to convince a Ukraine to stop defending itself, to feel safe in doing so. At the moment, Kyiv is being forced to contemplate some extremely difficult compromises. It's getting pressure not just from an impatient White House to end the war, but also by a Moscow refusing to make any kind of concession. And so for that to change, the discussions with this Trump-imposed deadline this week are going to have to yield some pretty significant results. But what Kyiv will point to time after time are scenes like this. Last night, we saw almost 500 drones launched at Ukraine, more than 20 cruise missiles. We heard one go overhead at around 7 o'clock this morning. It sounded like a fighter jet. And this is why Kyiv is adamant that enough pressure has to be applied by the US on Russia to ensure that the fighting stops for the long term.
All right, I'm joined now by Michael Bociurkiw. He's a global affairs analyst and senior fellow with the Atlantic Council and creator of World Briefing newsletter on Substack. So good morning, good to see you as always, sir. So as James Waterhouse pointed out, there's this fine balancing act that will need to be struck. Do you think that there is a deal that both Russia and Ukraine can sign on to? Right now, it seems as if the Ukrainians are, in principle, okay with this deal. Russians, we haven't heard from. What are you hearing?
Yeah, good to be with you again. Look, whatever is agreed to, it could actually work in Ukraine's favor. But I think, as Holly indicated, the Russians don't seemed in a particular mood to approve a new set of proposals. At the end of the day, it comes down, I think, to security guarantees for Ukraine. And Ukrainians are deservedly still very much traumatized by that Budapest memorandum, where they handed over their nuclear arsenal at the time to Russia in return for security guarantees that were not held up by the United States and others. They're very, very nervous right now. And also working in the background, of course, is Mr. Zelensky. He saw what happened here in South Africa at the G20, a very unpredictable Mr. Trump. World leaders, including Mr. Zelensky, are navigating a new political ground, new diplomatic ground, trying to figure out if it's even worth engaging with the Trump administration that is very erratic, very unpredictable. And we can still not figure out their somewhat tilted position towards Kremlin. Yeah.
So, as you know, Michael, the initial plan indicated that Russia would get to keep some of the gains that it made during this almost 4-year-long war. Of course, that was a non-starter for many Ukrainians. It seems that that has been sort of pushed back a bit. But if Russia is not able to keep these territories that it seized, is that a deal breaker for them?
Probably. They actually want to gain territory that they don't even control in the Donbass. And if they were allowed to do that, as is enumerated in the first proposal we saw, that would be possibly game over for Ukraine. That would allow them to occupy this very, very strategic defensive belt that would make it much easier for them to go up to the Dnipro River and onwards. So the other thing we must remember that anything that involves ceding territory needs to be approved by the Ukrainian parliament. We know how they're going to vote. They're going to vote against it. So very, very difficult times for Mr. Zelensky to navigate right now because he's on political thin ice as it is. And I think he needs his tentacles on the ground in Ukraine very deeply to capture the public mood and what they're willing to put up with in terms of concessions.
Before we go, let me just get a big picture sense from you of a United States that has even contemplated the notion that an aggressor nation, in this case Russia, who attacked another country, a sovereign country, would be able to keep gains that it made in what many call an illegal war. In other words, rather than saying, you haven't been able to win this war, you haven't been able to do what it is you set out to accomplish, you should be pushed back to the borders that were in place before you launched this illegal invasion. The United States is saying, in the earlier proposal, yeah, okay, that's not a problem. You can keep what you got, and we'll figure something out for that. Doesn't, I mean, foreign policy for this country, global strategic policy for the United States in previous generations, this would not have been the case.
You're absolutely right. This would have been unthinkable previously because the United States, I think, relished its position as the defender of the free world, of the rules-based international order. But now we're seeing, a president who has no ideology. I don't know what kind of morals he has. And we also see, not to get too much into the weeds, but I think competing values, competing interests in the different teams being deployed to deal with the Ukrainians. So very, very difficult times.
Yeah, for sure. Michael Bociurkiw, always great to have you and your perspective. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.